I'm Nancy, and I'm 58 years old. For most of my life, I believed that family meant unconditional love and acceptance. I raised my 2 daughters in Portland, Oregon, working double shifts as a nurse to give them everything I never had. My ex-husband left when the girls were young, so it was just the 3 of us against the world. We were close, or so I thought, until that Christmas dinner changed everything. It was December 23rd, 2 years ago. The Portland sky was its typical winter gray, with rain tapping against the windows of my mother's house. My mother, Eleanor, had always been particular about appearances. Her home in the West Hills neighborhood was immaculate, decorated with expensive ornaments and fresh garland that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I arrived with homemade cookies and a carefully wrapped scarf I'd knitted for her, excited to spend the holidays together. My daughters, Sarah and Michelle, were already there with their families. Sarah, my oldest at 34, had married a successful attorney. Michelle, 32, worked in tech and lived in a modern downtown condo. They were both doing well, much better than I ever did at their age, and I was proud of them. But lately, I'd noticed a distance growing between us, subtle at first, then more pronounced. The dinner table was set with my mother's finest china. The chandelier above cast a warm glow over the turkey and all the trimmings. Everything looked perfect, like a scene from a holiday magazine. I should have known that perfection was just a facade. We were halfway through dinner when my mother cleared her throat. She had that look on her face, the one she got when she was about to make an important announcement. My stomach tightened instinctively. "I have something to tell everyone," Eleanor said, setting down her wine glass with deliberate precision. "I've made some decisions about my estate and my life moving forward." I smiled, expecting perhaps news about a vacation or a remodeling project. Instead, what came next felt like a physical blow. "I've decided to simplify my life and my will," she continued, looking directly at Sarah and Michelle, pointedly avoiding my eyes. "I'm leaving everything to my granddaughters. Nancy, I'm sorry, but I've erased you from my will entirely. You've been a disappointment, and I can't pretend otherwise anymore." The room went silent, except for the soft Christmas music playing in the background. I felt my face flush hot, then cold. My fork clattered onto my plate. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I managed to whisper. "You never made anything of yourself," she said coldly, as if discussing the weather. "You married poorly, got divorced, worked a mediocre job your whole life. Look at your daughters. They've done so much better without following your example. I'm proud of them. You, I'm simply tired of pretending about." I looked at Sarah and Michelle, waiting for them to defend me, to tell their grandmother she was wrong. Instead, Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat and studied her plate. Michelle took a long sip of wine and remained silent. Their silence hurt worse than my mother's words. "You're not going to say anything?" I asked my daughters, my voice cracking. "Mom, you have to understand," Sarah finally said, not meeting my eyes. "Grandmother has a point. You've always been so struggling. It's been hard watching you barely get by. I was raising you both alone," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I worked myself to exhaustion to give you opportunities. And we appreciate that," Michelle added quickly. "But grandmother's right that you could have done more with your life. This is her decision to make." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. My hands were shaking, and I could feel tears threatening to spill over. "I see. Well, thank you for this lovely Christmas memory." I grabbed my coat and left, walking out into the cold Portland rain without looking back. Behind me, I heard my mother say something about me being overly dramatic, followed by the sound of conversation resuming as if nothing had happened. The weeks following that Christmas dinner were the darkest of my life. I called my daughters repeatedly, but they rarely answered. When they did, the conversations were brief and awkward. They made excuses about being busy, about needing time to process things. But I knew the truth. They'd chosen my mother's money and approval over their relationship with me. I went to work at Portland General Hospital in a fog. My colleagues noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. How do you tell people that your own mother publicly disowned you while your children watched in silence? I felt ashamed, as if I truly was the failure Eleanor had declared me to be. In February, I learned from a former neighbor that my mother had sold her house. The beautiful West Hills home where I'd grown up, where I'd brought my own children for holidays, had been sold to a young couple for $1.8 million. My mother moved to a luxury retirement community in Lake Oswego, downsizing to a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment overlooking the lake. I drove by the old house one rainy afternoon. New cars sat in the driveway, and through the windows, I could see the new owners had already begun redecorating. Something about seeing that house in someone else's hands made my grief turn into something else: determination. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table in my modest apartment in Southeast Portland and took stock of my life. I was 58 years old, worked as a registered nurse making a decent but not extravagant salary, and had about $40,000 in savings. I'd been putting away money for years, living frugally, though apparently that still made me a failure in my family's eyes. But I had something they didn't expect. I was good at my job, respected by my colleagues, and known for my reliability. More importantly, I had nothing left to lose. I started picking up extra shifts, every overtime opportunity I could get. I worked nights, weekends, holidays. If there was a shift available, I took it. My coworkers thought I was saving for a vacation or maybe an early retirement. I let them think whatever they wanted. I also began studying the real estate market obsessively. I learned about mortgages, interest rates, property values, and market trends. I met with a financial advisor who helped me understand my options. At my age and income level, getting approved for a mortgage on an expensive property would be challenging, but not impossible, especially if I could make a substantial down payment. Months passed. I barely left my apartment except for work. I had no social life, no hobbies, nothing but work and planning. Sometimes I wondered if I was becoming obsessed, if this was healthy. But then I'd remember that Christmas dinner, my mother's cold voice, my daughter's silence, and I'd take on another shift. By October, I'd saved another $30,000. Combined with my existing savings and a small inheritance from my father that I'd left untouched for years, I had nearly $110,000. It still wasn't enough for what I had in mind, but I was getting closer. One evening in November, I was scrolling through real estate listings when I saw it. My mother's old house was back on the market. The young couple who'd bought it were relocating for work and needed to sell quickly. The listing price was $1.7 million, slightly less than what they'd paid, probably because they were motivated sellers. My heart raced as I stared at the photos. The house looked almost exactly as I remembered it, though some of the furniture was different. I could picture every room, remember every holiday gathering, every birthday party, every ordinary Tuesday evening from my childhood. I called the real estate agent listed on the property before I could talk myself out of it. The real estate agent, a cheerful woman named Patricia, sounded surprised when I expressed serious interest in the property. I'm sure I didn't seem like the typical buyer for a nearly $2 million home. I explained that I'd grown up in that house and had strong sentimental reasons for wanting to buy it. Patricia was sympathetic, but realistic. I have to be honest with you, Nancy. With properties at this price point, you'll need excellent credit and a substantial down payment. Most lenders want at least 20% down for homes in this range. 20% of $1.7 million was $340,000. I had less than a third of that. What about unconventional lending options, I asked, or co-signers, or anything else that might work? Patricia paused. Let me do some research and get back to you. I have a few mortgage broker contacts who specialize in creative financing solutions. No promises, but let me see what's possible. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia connected me with several financial professionals. We explored every option: FHA loans, physician loans, which sometimes applied to nurses, special programs for healthcare workers, and even the possibility of finding an investor partner. Nothing quite worked with my current financial situation. I was ready to give up when Patricia called me with an unexpected possibility. Nancy, I have an unusual situation that might interest you. The sellers are desperate to close quickly because their new jobs start in January. They've indicated they'd be willing to consider owner financing for the right buyer. What does that mean exactly? I asked. It means they'd essentially act as the bank. You'd make a down payment to them and then pay them directly over time with interest, rather than getting a traditional mortgage. It's less common with expensive properties, but given their timeline and your connection to the house, they're willing to discuss it. My hands trembled as I held the phone. What kind of down payment would they want? They need at least $200,000 to cover what they still owe on their mortgage. If you could come up with that, we could potentially structure monthly payments you could afford based on your income. $200,000. I had $110,000. I needed 90,000 more, and I needed it fast because Patricia said the sellers wanted to close by mid-December if possible. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my older brother, Thomas. We'd grown apart over the years, partly because he lived in Seattle, and partly because he'd always been closer to our mother than I was. But Thomas was a successful architect, and more importantly, he'd always been fair-minded. "Nancy?" he said when he answered, surprise evident in his voice. "Is everything okay?" I explained everything. The Christmas dinner, the estrangement from my daughters, and now this opportunity to buy back our childhood home. I didn't beg or cry. I simply laid out the facts and asked if he'd be willing to loan me $90,000 with interest secured against the property. Thomas was quiet for a long time. "That was really what Mom said to you? At Christmas dinner?" "Word for word," he sighed heavily. I knew things were tense, but I didn't realize. "Nancy, I'm sorry. I should have checked in with you more. And yes, I'll loan you the money. Consider it an investment in justice." I almost cried with relief. "Thomas, I don't know how to thank you." "Just promise me one thing," he said. "When you get that house, don't do it for revenge. Do it because you deserve to have something beautiful in your life." His words stuck with me. Was this about revenge? I examined my motivations honestly. Yes, part of me wanted my mother to know that the daughter she'd erased had bought back the house she'd sold. But more than that, I wanted something tangible to show for all my years of hard work. I wanted a place that was truly mine, filled with better memories than the ones that had been made there before. With Thomas's loan secured, things moved quickly. Patricia negotiated with the sellers, and by the first week of December, we had a deal. I would put down $200,000, and the sellers would finance the remaining $1.5 million at a reasonable interest rate, with monthly payments I could manage by continuing to work full-time and taking occasional overtime. The closing was scheduled for December 18th. As I signed paper after paper, I felt a strange mix of emotions: triumph, anxiety, sadness, and hope, all tangled together. When the final signature was complete and the keys were handed to me, I sat in the empty house for a long time, just breathing in the reality of what I'd done. I owned my childhood home. The daughter who'd been erased from the will owned the house that had been sold away. I didn't tell anyone about the house at first. I moved in quietly over the week before Christmas, bringing my modest belongings into the spacious rooms. The house felt enormous compared to my small apartment. I furnished it slowly, buying pieces I actually liked rather than just what was affordable. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after that terrible dinner, I sent a simple message to my mother, my daughters, and my brother. "Merry Christmas from my new home." I attached a photo of me standing in front of the fireplace in the living room of the West Hills house. My phone started ringing within minutes. First Sarah, then Michelle, then my mother. I let them all go to voicemail. Thomas sent a text. "Proud of you, sis." That was the only one I answered. Eventually, I listened to the messages. My mother's voice was sharp with disbelief and anger. "How did you? That's impossible. You need to call me immediately." Sarah and Michelle sounded confused and slightly accusatory, demanding to know how I could afford such a house, implying I must have hidden money or done something dishonest. I didn't call any of them back that day. Instead, I made myself a nice dinner, lit a fire in the fireplace, and watched the rain fall on Portland's lights below. For the first time in a year, I felt at peace. They kept calling. After 3 days, I finally answered when Sarah called. "Mom, we need to talk." "Grandmother is very upset." "I imagine she is," I said calmly. "How did you buy that house? Do you have any idea how expensive?" "I know exactly how expensive it is, Sarah. I'm making the mortgage payments every month from my nursing salary and the overtime shifts I've been working for the past year." "But that doesn't make sense. You couldn't possibly." "I could, and I did. I saved every penny, worked every extra shift I could get, and made it happen." "Isn't that what you all told me I should have done? Made more of myself?" There was a long silence. "Are you doing this to hurt us?" The question caught me off guard. "No, sweetheart. I'm doing this for me. Maybe for the first time in my life, I did something just for myself." Over the next few months, my relationship with my daughters slowly, painfully began to thaw. Michelle came to visit first in February. She walked through the house quietly, touching the banister on the stairs, looking out the windows at views she remembered from childhood visits to her grandmother. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said finally. We should have stood up for you that night. Yes, you should have, I agreed. I wasn't ready to let them off easily. Grandmother told us for years that you were irresponsible with money, that you'd made bad choices. We believed her because, well, you did always seem to be struggling. I was struggling because I was raising 2 children alone on a nurse's salary, I said firmly. I was struggling because I chose to be present for you instead of chasing promotions that would have meant more hours away from home. I made sacrifices, and apparently, everyone interpreted those sacrifices as failures. Michelle wiped her eyes. I see that now, and I see that you're not a failure at all. You're probably the strongest person I know. Sarah came a few weeks later. Her apology was harder, more complicated. She admitted that she'd been embarrassed by my financial situation, that she'd compared me unfavorably to her friends' successful parents. I wanted a mom who drove a nice car and took exotic vacations, she confessed. I didn't appreciate the mom who made sure I had everything I needed, even when it meant you had nothing. These conversations didn't fix everything instantly. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But they were talking to me again, and this time they were actually listening. My mother was a different story. She came to the house in March, unannounced, ringing the doorbell insistently until I answered. She looked older than I remembered, more fragile. "May I come in?" she asked stiffly. I stepped aside and let her enter. She walked through the room slowly, running her hand along the walls, looking at how I'd decorated. Finally, she sat in the living room, in the same chair she'd favored when she lived here. "I suppose you think you've proven something," she said. "I wasn't trying to prove anything to you, Mom. I was trying to prove something to myself. You've always been stubborn. I learned from the best." She almost smiled at that. Almost. I was wrong to say those things at Christmas. Your brother made that very clear to me, several times. Thank you for saying that. But I meant what I said about my will. You're not in it. I nodded slowly. I know. And honestly, I don't care anymore. I don't need your money or your approval. I've built something for myself, by myself. That's enough. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Respect, maybe, or regret. You're more like me than I ever wanted to admit. Is that a compliment? In its own way, yes. We didn't become close after that. Some damage goes too deep to fully heal. But we reached a kind of understanding, a détente. She stopped criticizing my choices, and I stopped expecting her to change. Now, as I sit in my home office looking out at the Portland skyline, I'm 60 years old. My daughters visit regularly, and we're building a new kind of relationship, one based on honesty rather than obligation. Thomas comes down from Seattle every few months, and we've grown closer than we ever were as children. I still work as a nurse, though I've cut back to full-time without overtime. I've started gardening in the yard, something I never had space for in my apartment. I've joined a book club and made new friends. I've even started dating a kind man I met at the hospital, another nurse who appreciates my work ethic and independence. The house is filled with new memories now, better ones. Last Christmas, I hosted dinner for my daughters, their families, and Thomas. We laughed, told stories, and celebrated being together. No one was erased, no one was dismissed. Everyone belonged. Sometimes people ask me if buying this house was worth the sacrifice, worth the year of grueling work and financial stress. I always say yes, but not for the reasons they expect. It wasn't worth it because I got revenge or proved my family wrong. It was worth it because I proved to myself that I was capable of more than anyone, including me, had believed. I'm Nancy, I'm 60 years old, and I own my life and my home. That's more than enough. That's everything.